You've been staring at your phone for 2 hours, and you can't remember a single thing you looked at. There's a list in your notes app of things you should do, things that might actually make you feel better, but opening that list feels like trying to move through concrete. Your friends ask how you're doing, and you say, fine, just busy. Because how do you explain that you're not sad, not anxious in the obvious way, just stuck? Like you're watching your own life happen from behind glass. On paper, you're doing everything right. You've got the job, or at least a job. You have people who care about you. You're paying your bills. You're not in crisis. But there's this heaviness that follows you everywhere, this sense that you're performing your own life rather than living it. You wake up and immediately feel tired. Not physically tired, but existentially tired. Like you're already exhausted by the day before it even starts. And the worst part, you can't talk about it. Because when you say, I feel stuck, people give you advice. They tell you to make a vision board, to exercise more, to try therapy, to practice gratitude, to just choose happiness. And you know they mean well, you know they're trying to help, but their advice just makes you feel more alone because it's clear they don't understand. They don't get that you've already tried the morning routine, you've already downloaded the meditation app, you've already made the list of things you're grateful for, and none of it touches this thing, this stuck feeling that lives so deep you can't even name where it starts. So you stop mentioning it. You perform okayness so convincingly that even you almost believe it sometimes. You show up, you function, you do what you're supposed to do. And everyone thinks you're fine because you've gotten really, really good at looking fine. But alone, at night, when there's no one to perform for, you feel it. That heaviness. That sense that something fundamental is wrong, but you can't figure out what it is. There's this constant guilt, too, because you know people have real problems. People are struggling with actual trauma, actual poverty, actual crises. And here you are with your decent apartment and your stable enough life, feeling like you're drowning in beige. You tell yourself to get over it, to be grateful, to stop being so self-absorbed. But the stuckness doesn't respond to shame. It just gets quieter, more persistent. It stops being something you feel and starts being something you are. Every choice feels impossibly weighted. Should you stay at this job or look for something else? Should you invest in this relationship or end it? Should you move cities, go back to school, change everything? Or is that just running away? You analyze endlessly, but never arrive at clarity. You read articles about following your passion and feel more confused because you're not even sure what you want anymore. You've been optimizing for what you should want for so long that you've lost touch with what you actually want. So, you cope. You scroll, you binge shows, you stay busy with things that don't matter, you make plans you might cancel, you start projects you won't finish. Not because you're lazy. God, you're not lazy. You're exhausted from trying. But because doing nothing feels safer than trying something that might confirm your worst fear. That even when you try, nothing changes. That maybe this is just how life feels. That maybe everyone else is faking it too, and you're the only one naive enough to think it should feel different. You look at your life from the outside and think, this should be enough. But it's not. And you don't know if that means something's wrong with your life or something's wrong with you.
Here's what nobody tells you about feeling stuck. It's not a character flaw. It's not laziness. It's not evidence that something is fundamentally broken in you. Feeling stuck is actually information. It's your psyche's way of trying to get your attention because something important is misaligned. But here's the thing. Most of us have been taught to measure our lives by external metrics. Job title, relationship status, income, how busy we are, how our life looks on social media. And we've gotten really good at optimizing for these metrics. We build lives that look successful from the outside, but you can win at all the external games and still feel empty because you built someone else's version of a good life, not yours. Somewhere along the way, most of us shifted from asking, what do I want, to what should I want? We started living from the outside in instead of the inside out. We chose majors based on job prospects, not curiosity. We took jobs based on prestige or stability, not whether the work actually mattered to us. We stayed in relationships because they looked right on paper, even when they felt wrong in our bodies. We built lives designed to impress people we don't even like. And the stuckness you're feeling, that's the part of you that knows the difference between performing a life and living one. Your conscious mind might be saying, "This is fine. This is what success looks like. I should be grateful." But somewhere deeper, the part of you that knows your truth is saying, "This isn't it." And that conflict between what you think you should want and what you actually need, that's what creates the stuck feeling. But it's not just psychological, it's physiological too. When you're living misaligned, your nervous system knows it. That's why you feel tired all the time, even though you're fine. That's why you can't make decisions. That's why everything feels heavy. Your body is trying to tell you something, but you've been trained to override those signals. You've learned to push through, to be productive, to keep going even when everything in you is saying, "This isn't it. This isn't it. This isn't it." And here's the really tricky part. You can't just leave. You can't just quit the job, end the relationship, change everything. Well, you could, but that's actually not the solution. Because the stuck feeling isn't really about your specific circumstances. It's about the fact that you've lost connection to your own internal compass. You've been navigating by everyone else's map for so long that you don't trust your own sense of direction anymore. You look outside yourself for answers. What should I do? What would make sense? What would people think? Instead of asking what actually feels true. And changing external circumstances without rebuilding that internal connection, that just means you'll create a different version of the same misalignment. New job, same stuck. New city, same disconnection. Because the problem isn't the circumstances. It's that you've abandoned yourself so thoroughly, you don't even know how to hear your own voice anymore. There's also grief involved that nobody talks about. If you admit that the life you built isn't working, you have to grieve all the time and energy you invested in building it. You have to sit with the reality that the choices you thought were right were actually just safe, or expected, or designed to avoid disappointing people. You have to face the fact that you might have been wrong about what you wanted, or that you knew all along but ignored it because following that knowing felt too risky, too selfish, too much. That grief is heavy. Sometimes staying stuck feels easier than facing what you've been avoiding. And there's something else, something that sounds dark, but is actually really important to understand. Part of you might not want to get unstuck, because being stuck has become your identity. It's become the reason you can't do things, can't risk things, can't be disappointed by things. As long as you're stuck, you're safe from failure. Safe from trying and it not working out. Safe from wanting something and not getting it. Being stuck is painful, but it's a familiar pain. And our nervous systems often choose familiar pain over unfamiliar possibility because at least with familiar pain, we know what we're dealing with. The devil you know, right? So when you ask yourself, why can't I just change? The answer isn't that you're weak or broken. Is that change requires you to grieve who you've been, trust yourself again, and risk the terrifying possibility that even when you do align your life with your truth, it might still be hard. It might still hurt sometimes. It might still not look like what you imagined. And that uncertainty, that's what keeps you stuck.
So, what do you do when you realize you're stuck? First, you stop treating it like an emergency that needs immediate fixing. The stuckness isn't the problem. It's the symptom pointing toward the problem. Your job isn't to escape the stuck feeling as quickly as possible. Your job is to get curious about what it's trying to tell you. And I know that sounds frustrating because you want answers, you want a plan, you want someone to just tell you what to do. But the truth is, you already know. somewhere under all the shoulds and supposed tos and everyone else's expectations, you know. You're just scared to listen. So start small. Not with, what should I do with my life, but with, what do I actually enjoy? Not, what's my purpose, but what feels alive versus what feels like obligation. You're not making big decisions yet. You're just gathering data about yourself that you've been ignoring. Notice what you're drawn to when you're not performing. Notice what lights you up versus what depletes you. Notice the difference between I should want this and I actually want this. They feel different in your body if you pay attention. Should feels like pressure, like tension in your chest, like holding your breath. Want feels like expansion, like leaning forward, like yes. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. This is going to feel selfish at first. You've been trained to put everyone else's needs and expectations first, so asking what you want will trigger guilt. That guilt is information too. It's showing you how deeply you've been conditioned to abandon yourself in the name of being good, being responsible, being acceptable. But listen, you being miserable and stuck doesn't actually serve anyone. The people who truly love you don't want you performing a life that's killing you slowly. And the people who need you to stay small so they feel comfortable, those aren't your people. You don't need to blow up your life. You don't need to quit everything and move to another country and start over. That's just another version of running away from yourself. You need to run small experiments. Say no to one thing you'd normally say yes to out of obligation. Spend a weekend doing exactly what you want without justifying it to anyone. Have the conversation you've been avoiding. Apply for the thing that scares you. Stop doing the thing that drains you just because you've always done it. These experiments give you new data. They help you remember that you have agency, that your choices matter, that you're allowed to want things and pursue them even if they don't make sense to anyone else. And understand this, the path from stuck to unstuck isn't a straight line. You're going to have days where you feel clear and motivated, days where you take action and feel alive. And then you're going to have days where you're back to scrolling for hours, feeling hopeless, wondering if anything you did even mattered. That's not failure. That's the process. You're rewiring years of conditioning. You're learning to trust yourself again after abandoning yourself for so long. You're building new neural pathways, new patterns, new ways of being. That doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen linearly. Some days you'll move forward, some days you'll move backward. Most days you'll just sit in the uncomfortable middle, not sure if anything is changing, wondering if you're doing it right. You are. That uncomfortable middle, that's where the real work happens. And here's something else that might help. Your stuckness might actually be protecting you from something you're not ready to face yet. Might be keeping you from having to face a truth you're not ready for. Might be buying you time to build the internal resources you'll need for what comes next. Sometimes stuck isn't the enemy. Sometimes stuck is the chrysalis, the in-between space where you're not who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. And that space is supposed to be uncomfortable and disorienting and slow. You can't rush a transformation. You can only stay with it.
Look, the truth is that feeling stuck when your life looks fine is one of the loneliest experiences because it's invisible. No one can see it, which means no one validates it, which means you start questioning if it's even real. But it is real. The disconnect you're feeling between how your life looks and how it feels, that's real data worth paying attention to. You're allowed to feel stuck, even with a good job. You're allowed to want something different, even if your life is objectively fine. You're allowed to grieve the path you thought you'd be on. You're allowed to not have answers yet. You're allowed to take up space with your confusion and your uncertainty and your stuck feeling without having to justify it or fix it immediately. And you're allowed to be honest about it, not just with yourself, but with other people. You're allowed to stop performing okayness and admit, I don't know what I'm doing and everything feels heavy right now. The right people won't run. They'll sit with you in it. And the people who can't handle your honesty, they were only ever comfortable with the performance anyway. Getting unstuck isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to sit in the questions. It's about trusting that the stuckness is temporary even when it feels permanent. It's about taking tiny actions even when you can't see where they're leading. It's about coming back to yourself again and again, even when, especially when, it would be easier to just keep performing the life everyone expects. I've been thinking a lot about why we get stuck, what keeps us there, and what actually helps us move. I made another video about why we sabotage things right when they start getting good, because that's another piece of this puzzle. We get ourselves stuck because movement feels dangerous for reasons we don't always understand. It's right there if you want to keep exploring this with me. And honestly, I'd love to hear where you're stuck right now. Not because I have all the answers, I don't, but because sometimes naming it out loud to someone who gets it is the first step toward unstuck. Leave a comment if you want. I read all of them. You're not alone in this, even when it feels like you are.